Hello, Algebra 2. Welcome to the first day of 7.4, adding and subtracting rational expressions. So adding and subtracting can be a little bit more difficult as far as rational expressions go in fractions. And the reason why is because when you add and subtract fractions, you have to have the same denominator. Multiplication and division do not need the same denominator, so this makes it a little bit trickier. So today we are going to just refresh our memory on how to add and subtract with the same denominator, and then we're going to work on finding least common multiple for us to help simplify when we go into the second day of this lesson. So let's go ahead and just refresh our memory that when you add two fractions with the same denominator, they have to have the same denominator, okay? And you add the tops, but you keep the bottom. So this would be 2/4, okay? And that 2/4 can be simplified to 1/2, okay? So you add the tops, keep the bottom, okay? So that would just be 1. So we're going to get into what happens with expressions or with rational expressions that have unlike denominators, but we're going to get more into that tomorrow. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at example 1 together, okay? For example 1, when you have the same denominator, okay, you're going to keep that denominator and you're going to add the tops. Okay, so you are going to have 10/4x, okay? Now, there's not going to be, for this type of a problem, I would like you to simplify it because I know you know how to do this. We're not going to get super fancy, but let's go ahead and simplify 10/4. 2 goes into both of them, leaving you with a 5 and with a 2. So we have 5/2x. Now, adding and subtracting can be complicated enough, so we're not going to say what the denominator can't be equal to. So we're just going to stop there for today, okay? Okay. Another thing that you're going to hear me say a lot, when there is a minus sign between two fractions, whether they have the same denominator or not, the first thing that I always do is I make this a plus, and then I make everything behind it an opposite. So not necessarily a negative, but an opposite. And since 5 was positive, it becomes a negative, okay? Now remember, when we add fractions, we keep the bottom, okay, as long as the bottoms are the same. And then the top, you will combine like terms, and you can't take 2 minus 5, so it's 2x minus 5. And then you are going to leave it just like that, okay? Okay, go ahead and try on the left-hand side. You guys have these 4 on the left. Go ahead and pause the video and go to the left-hand side, fill these out, and then replay the video, and I will show you the answers. Okay, go ahead and double check what you got on the left-hand side. Notice that part A and part C, I added the opposite here. Okay. And some of those needed to be simplified. Okay, the second part of this lesson is finding the least common multiple, okay? This is going to help us when we are finding our denominator, our like denominator, okay, our common denominator. So least common multiple, what we want to talk about are the things that they share and the things that they don't share. So what you're going to do is we're going to list out x squared minus 4, and then we're going to list its factors, okay? And then we're going to do x squared minus 4x plus 4 and list out those factors, okay? So just like we have been doing, you are going to factor, okay? If this can be factored, you need to factor. Now remember, this first one, you have a perfect, and a minus in between, okay? So you are going to have what times itself gives you x squared, Okay, and what times itself gives you 4. Remember, I usually put those little square roots around it. You get 2 and 2, make 1 positive, make 1 negative. Okay, now the bottom one here, what multiplies to give us 4, what adds or subtracts to give us 4. Okay, so we are going to do our set of parentheses. Okay, what multiplies to give you 4 is 1 and 4. That's going to get me to either a 5 or a 3, and I want it to get me to a 4. So it's actually going to be the 2 and 2. And then the bigger number will have a minus, and in order to get us to a negative 4, I need the other one to also be a minus sign. Okay, now to find our least common multiple, meaning a number or an expression that both of them go into, that both of them share. And we don't want it to be the biggest, we want it to be the least common. So basically the smallest number both of them can go into, okay? For instance, 5 and 4, they both go into 100, okay? But their least common multiple, okay, would be 20. Okay, so you always want the smallest number, otherwise it makes for some really gross simplifying in the end. Okay, so as we look at this, we have all of our factors listed out. And what we're going to do now is we are going to find our least common multiple by looking at what do they have in common. Okay, so if you look at this, you should see that they have just one x minus 2 in common. Now I know that there's another one, but what you're going to do is whatever they have in common, okay, you are going to write out, and you're only going to write it once. Okay. So when we write this out, you are going to write out this x minus 2 that they have in common. Okay, I want you to notice, so I've already written that highlighted part down. I want you to notice they do not have anything else in common. And once again, remember, adding and subtracting groups everything together. So anything they don't have in common, you just throw at the end. Okay, so if you look at this highlighted piece, okay, came from here. This is what they had in common. Okay, the other pieces are what they didn't have in common. Okay, so kind of think about it that way. Now let's go ahead and try another one together. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this next part. So let's list out the factors for each of these. So we've got 2x squared, find the least common multiple of 2x squared and of x and x plus 2. So what you end up doing here is you end up basically kind of figuring out what do they have in common, what do they not have in common, okay? When you are doing this, you want to look at the factors that make up the coefficients in front. So there's a 2, and then whenever we have an x to a power, I write down how many they have. So x squared looks like x times x, okay? Now, for this next one, it is already basically in factored form, okay? So now, remember that you are going to look at what do we have in common. And if you look at this, I'm only highlighting 1x, okay? So I'm highlighting 1x because they only have that 1x in common, okay? And even though this one still has an x there, we only want to write it once because that's how many they have in common. Okay, so least common multiple. What they have in common is an x. They have just that 1x in common, okay? And they have nothing else in common because this plus is keeping the x and 2 together. So you are going to write down everything else they don't have in common. So they have a 2, they have another x, and then they have a x plus 2. And now let's go ahead and simplify what this all means. This basically means a 2. It means an x squared and then an x plus 2. So this is our least common multiple. Okay, go ahead and go on to the left-hand side and try those ones on your own. Okay, so left-hand side, try this one on your own. Remember, you've got x, and you need to factor what x squared minus 15x plus 36 is. Okay, and then you have 2x, and you're factoring a perfect and a minus in between. Okay, and then you pick what they have in common and figure out what their least common multiple is. Go ahead and press pause, and then press play to check your answers. Okay, so you can see what I did here, factored into x minus 12, x minus 3. Okay, if you look at what we had in common, we had an x minus 12 in common. Okay, that's where I put this right here. And then everything else was what they didn't have in common. Oh, actually, I forgot about these x's here. Those ones were in common as well. Okay, so you add a 2, an x plus 12, an x minus 3, and then these pieces here are what we had in common. Okay.